Hey YouTube, I just want to talk with you a little bit tonight about my journey on dialysis. I was diagnosed with kidney failure in 2011. I got very, very ill, and I went to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, they diagnosed me at that time with pneumonia. And so they gave me some antibiotics and sent me home for 7 days. And after I take the 7 days of antibiotics, I was supposed to return to my doctor to let him know what was um, going on, if it was had did me any good. And so after the 7 days, I didn't have any insurance anymore. And so I went to the neighborhood clinic because my medication had ran out, the antibiotics had ran out, and I wasn't feeling any better. And so I went into the clinic and they saw me and everything, and they didn't do any testing or blood work or anything. They just gave me a card to tell me to come back in 6 months. Okay, and so I left the office and everything, and I was feeling very, very, really, really rough. And so, I felt so bad. I went back to the hospital, and they said that I still had the pneumonia. So they kept me in the hospital. I stayed in the hospital probably around maybe about 3 or 4 days. Um, and then I went home. Well, I had an episode, and so I had to go back to the hospital. And when I went back to the hospital, they treated me, and then they ran some more tests on me, and then they found out I had a disease that was called Wegener's disease, which I had never heard of it in my entire life. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how it came about or anything. The doctors knew very little about the Wegener's disease, but they said that it caused kidney failure, and it also caused my lungs to collapse. And so I stayed in the hospital probably around, probably about 2.5 weeks. And they treated me. And when I left the hospital, they told me I needed to go to see a kidney doctor, and which I did. After I left the hospital, I set up an appointment with the kidney doctor, and I went in to do some blood work, and they said my kidney, my creatinine levels and everything had decreased. And so they were thinking about putting me on dialysis. Well, at that time, my middle daughter was in the hospital at the same time I was. She went a week before I went into the hospital. And she was in there about 2 weeks before she was in there about 2 weeks before I went into the hospital. But she did not make it out. She passed before I could make it out of the hospital. I was laying in my bed one day, and they came and got me. They came to my room and they said, "Miss Williams, we need to take you to see your daughter right away." And so I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, what's wrong?" They said, "She's had an aneurysm." She's had an aneurysm, and she's bleeding. She's bleeding at the brain. She's bleeding at the brain. And so I went to, the, to her, the room where she was. went to the room where she was, and she was just lying there with the breathing tubes and everything. Oh, breathing tubes and everything. She had, she was just staring. And so I stayed in the room with her. And the one of the breathing tube came out. And so I called for the nurse. And they came in and rehooked the breathing tube up to